Well, we just wrapped up the series looking at all 20 OHL teams and their histories and how we got to where we are today. And from where it looks, the Ontario Hockey League is at a pretty healthy spot with 20 franchises in the league at the moment and none really in kind of crisis mode. We do have some question marks when it comes to teams like the future of the Oshawa Generals. They have an arena lease coming up in 2031, and there's been some disagreements between the Oshawa Generals and the city. Well, what's going on with the Peterborough Petes? Are they going to be getting a new arena anytime soon? And how long will the Brampton Steelheads stay at the CAA Center? Obviously, they just relocated this summer, and they do have a very team-friendly lease. So is their future now set in stone? Those are kind of the question marks we're looking at right now. But then when you look elsewhere towards the National Hockey League, expansion appears to be on the horizon again. They're right now sitting at 32 teams. So my inkling is that the OHL may look to expand maybe within the next 10 years or so. We already heard during the press conference with new OHL Commissioner Brian Crawford saying that there's a market that he would love to see the OHL return to, be it expansion, relocation, but we don't know just yet. And time will tell. And this is always a fun topic, talking about other communities that could potentially be home to an Ontario Hockey League franchise. So let's dive into it, looking at 6 communities that I've identified as possible sites for the OHL going forward. So the last time the Ontario Hockey League expanded was in 1998. We had the Brampton Battalion and Mississauga Ice Dogs added to the league, bringing it to a total of 20 teams. So it's been over 25 years since the OHL last expanded. And to note, both those teams not playing in the cities they started in. Mississauga, they would eventually end up in St. Catharines. They're now the Niagara Ice Dogs, while the Brampton Battalion moved up north and are now the North Bay Battalion. So just an interesting little note about that 1998 expansion process. But in the 90s, we saw a total of 5 new teams. The first one was the Detroit Ambassadors. They were added in 1992. They were actually the first American-based team added to the Ontario Hockey League. After that, the Barrie Colts, who we could say were the most successful out of all the expansion teams, they were added in 1995. They made the playoffs in their first season, the only expansion team to ever do that in the OHL's history. After that, we had the St. Mike's Majors in Toronto. They were added in 1996. And then, of course, Brampton and Mississauga. So the 90s were a busy decade for growth in the Ontario Hockey League. And I feel as though that could be on the horizon again for the Ontario Hockey League. We'll see what all happens, how it transpires. But let's go through the communities that I think could house an OHL team in the maybe not so distant future, either through expansion or relocation. Leading the list is the city of Toronto, and they have a long history when it comes to junior hockey. They had the Toronto Marlboros. They were there from 1904 until 1989. And then, of course, there was also the expansion with the St. Mike's Majors from 1996 until 2007. Now, for these teams, attendance ended up being an issue, and just being able to manage these teams year in and year out became quite the burden for ownership. Because if you look at the attendance, even just in the GTA, Mississauga, they've had attendance issues since they joined the OHL in 1998. Brampton has had attendance issues. So I think that's going to be your first hurdle. If Toronto is going to be considered a market, what's the attendance going to be like? Because it seems like it could be a demographics issue. It could be a fact that you have Toronto Maple Leaf fans, not hockey fans. Although the PWHL has done a great job after their first year playing hockey in the city of Toronto. So there's, I think, a lot of different factors here. The Marlboros, I did some digging. They actually left because they were having financial issues playing out of Maple Leaf Gardens. While the Majors, they were playing out of St. Mike's College. That facility only had 1,600 seats. So it's really hard to have your team going when you consider most OHL teams, they have to have about 3,500 seats plus to be a successful franchise in the Ontario Hockey League. So if you're going to return to the OHL, I know Crawford during his press conference said he would love to see Toronto back in the OHL circuit. So that's why they lead the list, because Crawford talked about Toronto in that press conference, but I think there's a lot of hurdles to seeing a team back in Ontario's capital. Where would the team play? that's a big question mark right there. The Mattamy Athletic Center, it can hold 3,800 fans, but you have the Toronto women's hockey team playing out of there. There's the Coca-Cola Coliseum that holds 7,700 fans. That might be too big for junior hockey in the city of Toronto because, like I said, the attendance issues. If you put them in the Coca-Cola Coliseum where the Toronto Marlies already play, I don't know if they're going to be that big of a draw. So there's the two big questions. And of course, Scotiabank Arena where the Toronto Maple Leafs play, I think is out of the question. The St. Mike's College facility, I think that's out of the question. So the only way I think this could work is if you build a new arena for the OHL team, junior hockey size rink, maybe about 4,000 to 5,000 seats, or there's some shuffling in regards to teams in the city of Toronto. So right now, a Toronto return, in my personal opinion, seems unlikely. But you never know. Weirder things have happened in the past. The next city on the list, Cornwall, Ontario. Cornwall, they were, of course, home to the Royals from 1969 until 1992. They were known for winning 3 Memorial Cups in 1972, 1980, and 81. The Royals were an outstanding franchise. They started playing in the Quebec League, actually, and then eventually made the shift to the Ontario Hockey League. So there has also been a few times since they relocated to Newmarket and now Sarnia to bring a team back to Cornwall. In 2000, the Owen Sound Platers, there were rumors that they were going to move to Cornwall. Obviously, a group of business owners decided to buy the Owen Sound franchise, rename them the Attack, but that was a moment where Cornwall was considered to get a franchise through relocation. And then after that, you'll remember the Hamilton Bulldogs looking for a temporary home because of the First Ontario Centre renovations. If you look at the list of communities they were exploring, Cornwall was one of those arenas that the Bulldogs could have relocated to instead of Brantford. So Cornwall's been on the radar. They've also been a neutral site game for preseason games. The Ottawa 67s and Kingston Frontenacs, I do believe, are playing a preseason game in the coming weeks once the training camp gets underway. So this is a community that I feel is ready for the OHL to return. The only question mark is the facility because the Cornwall Civic Complex, it's an older arena. It's about 20 minutes away from an hour and 20 minutes away from TD Place. So a natural rival with the Ottawa 67s because Ottawa, they're kind of out in the distance. Since the Belleville Bulls relocated to Hamilton, there's been a void in Eastern Ontario. So if you put the Cornwall Royals to play out the Cornwall Civic Complex, I think that would fill that void that's been missing since the Belleville Bulls relocated. And then, of course, you have the Kingston Frontenacs who are just down the 401 from the Civic Complex. So a lot of positives there for an East Division team. And now the complex, it was built in 1970, would likely need some work if the OHL is going to return. They have to bring it back up to OHL standards. But they do have a capacity of 5,000, which is the preferred attendance capacity for an OHL arena. The population of Cornwall right now sits at 47,000. That's 24th in Ontario, right behind the city of North Bay with a population of 51,000. So a very comparable market, Cornwall and North Bay. The only OHL team playing in a smaller population base, that would be Owen Sound at 22,000. So I think Cornwall would be a good fit, and I think they would be a great expansion candidate if and when the league does look to expand past 20 teams in the league. Next on the list, I have Burlington, Ontario. So with the Hamilton Bulldogs relocating to Brantford, there's once again a void in the Hamilton area. So you've got the QEW meets the 403. There's a project right now that the city of Burlington is considering. And this is why I put Burlington on the list and not Hamilton. Because renovations right now underway at the First Ontario Centre, but their plan is to attract an AHL team and not necessarily bring back the Bulldogs because Michael Andlauer has already said if the city of Brantford builds a new arena, they will stay in the Telephone City. So that would mean expansion or relocation of another organization would have to fill the void if a team were to move into Burlington because what they're doing is they want to build a 5,000-seat arena right off the 403. It's at the Aldershot GO station called the 1200 King Road Project. They're looking to build condos and housing to address the housing shortage. And then they want to have an entertainment section. So you'd have an arena with 5,000 seats, which could house an OHL team. And they mentioned that specifically in their city council meeting. And they also want to bring in concerts and other events, plus a college campus. So it's big plans. It's right now in the planning phases. However, city council is pretty excited about this project. It looks as though there's a good chance this project will move forward. And if that's the case, then the OHL will have a brand new arena waiting for them if they do, in fact, look to expand or move into the Burlington market. And it's got easy access to the highway. It's also got public transportation with the GO train and the GO buses. So it's really ideal. So we'll have to keep a close watch on this one. The Burlington City Council, like I said, they're heavily in favor, along with the Chamber of Commerce. So everybody right now seems to be on board. We have no price tag. Once the cost of this project comes about, that's when I think we might see some votes sway. But in the meantime, we just have to wait. Their next update is supposed to come in the fall. They had some public consultation meetings in the last few weeks, and it's been positive because of what this means for the city of Burlington. But like I said, once we figure out some of those costs, then we'll find out who's truly in favor of this project. And you have to figure a brand new arena like this would make the Ontario Hockey League very excited about Burlington as a potential candidate to join the OHL circuit. But if the Bulldogs, they do stay in Brantford, I think it's just waiting for that arena deal to be finalized. So we'll have to wait and see on that front. Next on the list, Pickering. Pickering, Ontario, located along the 401. And the only reason why I list Pickering as a potential site for an OHL team is because of the feud right now between the Oshawa Generals and City Council. So owner Rocco Tullio has already been open about moving the team to Pickering if they don't get the arena lease deal that they want. So they've already talked about ending the contract because they feel as though they need more space, more office space. They want some renovations done at the Tributes Community Center. The lease expires in 2031, and what Tullio has said is that if they don't have a new lease agreement in the next few years, they're going to have to look elsewhere. And they've already been approached by Durham Live. So they've spoken with the Generals about a lease offering to build a 6,800-seat arena, and that would be at the Pickering Casino, located right off the 401 near the Westney Road exit. So I don't think this would be necessarily an expansion location. This might be an Oshawa Generals relocation if they don't get the deal they're looking for with the city of Oshawa. Because outside of this, if the Oshawa Generals stay where they are, Pickering's a little too close, I would think, to the city of Oshawa to be considered as an expansion. It's when you're in that area, it's a shorter distance than Kitchener is to Guelph. That's the one comparable I would have. So I think outside of Oshawa relocating, I don't see Pickering as an expansion site. Although if Durham Live goes ahead with building the 6,800-seat arena and it's meant for hockey, maybe this could be a site that the OHL would consider. I think it's a long shot, but I think this is an interesting one to follow. And this one's going to take, I'm sure, a few more twists and turns, because the last time Rocco Tullio spoke openly about this was a year ago, and it's been kind of a radio silence since. So we'll have to wait and see. And again, if it is a brand new arena, how tempted would the OHL be to move to Pickering? We'll have to wait and see. Next on the list, Chatham Kent. So Chatham Kent, they've been used as a relocation chip in the past. The Niagara Ice Dogs, they did that 15 years ago, before the Meridian Center plans were approved by the city of St. Catharines. And then the Plymouth Whalers, when they were for sale, there was talk about them looking to move to Chatham. So the only thing really that holds Chatham back is the fact they don't have an arena that's suitable for the OHL. You have the Memorial Center where the Chatham Maroons play in the GOJHL. It was built in 1949, making it older than both the Sudbury Community Arena and the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium, and it only holds 2,500 spectators. So if Chatham is serious about having an OHL team in the future, they need a new arena. And the location, if you look at the map, not far from the city of Windsor. They're just about an hour away from the Spitfires in the WFCU Center. an hour and 20 minutes from Budweiser Gardens in London, and then just over an hour from Sarnia. So it's a great location. You could add the team easily into the West Division, or of course, the divisions could change when expansion happens, if it happens. So I think Chatham would be a great location. It's just, how serious would City Council be? They've talked in recent history about building a brand new arena. They had a vote back in 2020, and that bid was hinged on funding coming from the federal government, but that bid was rejected. So the plans for an arena kind of fizzled out, and they're looking at maybe a twin pad arena, but then you wouldn't have the seating capacity for an OHL team. So I think if the league were to expand, they need the arena situation to be figured out. But until then, how many more times is Chatham going to be used as that relocation chip? And we see that in the NHL too, with the city of Quebec. Quebec City has been used in that front as well, where fans want to see a team in Quebec, but of course, the NHL not too eager, it seems, to go there. But here in the OHL, Chatham uses that chip, but until they get a new arena, that's what's going to hold them back. Now, the last location, I'm going to say location, is Western New York. As long as I've been covering the OHL for the last 16 years, Western New York keeps coming up in conversations as a place that the league would like to expand to. But the question is, where do you put that team? Do you put them in the city of Buffalo? Okay, but then where are they going to play? Because the home of the Sabres, way too big for junior hockey. Do you put them out of the Harbor Center? That only holds 1,800. So your options are limited as to where exactly you would put this team in Western New York. Of course, Rochester would be a great size city, but you have the Rochester Americans of the American Hockey League, because you don't want to put a junior hockey league team in the same market as the American Hockey League. So that kind of rules out a few of those cities in New York State. But the one spot that may be of interest is Niagara Falls, New York. The mayor of Niagara Falls, he's been pushing to build a 7,000-seat arena called the Centennial Park. And this has been going on for the last couple of years, but there's been a lot of pushback from the community because the city would have to borrow money, and then the plan would be to cut back on infrastructure costs. So not as much money going to roads, not as much money going towards sewers and pipes. So that would be a bit of a burden on the city. So I'm sure the OHL would like to put a team in New York State, but not a lot of options. And I don't think the Centennial Park plan in Niagara Falls, New York is going anywhere because members of council a little unsure about this plan. It's the mayor who's been pushing it. And there's another group that wants to bring a data center to the city of Niagara Falls, which of course would be a lot of tech jobs, which would then help the community. So Niagara Falls, New York, maybe a site, but until there's a plan for an arena that's suitable for the OHL, I don't think we're going to see a team in New York State anytime soon. So with the way things are looking right now, I would think Cornwall would probably be the favorite for expansion. That's probably where you would start. So easily a team in the Eastern Conference. And the other option would probably be Burlington if City Council approves the project of that 5,000-seat arena, which seems very likely at this point. So then it becomes, okay, so how do you figure out the conferences, the divisions? Well, if you expand with Cornwall and Burlington, you put both of those teams in the Eastern Conference and then probably move Brantford to the West. But until we get there, it's all speculation at this point. But I think all signs are pointing that the OHL is healthy, and I wouldn't be surprised if they add a team or two within the next 10 years. That's just my best guess, but that's how I see it from the booth. What are your thoughts on expansion or even communities in Ontario, Michigan, New York State? Which communities do you think would best suit the Ontario Hockey League going forward? Love to see the interactions. I know this is always a fun summer topic, talking about potential new cities. I know Timmins is a team or a city that people tend to bring up. There's also York Region. There's a void there. I know there's a few other places that the OHL could fit. Thunder Bay, how often have they been talked about? But obviously distance is a factor. So love to see the comments. Let me know down below which community you think would best suit the OHL next. Thanks again for all your support. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. We'll talk to you again soon.